this Travis Wayne Goodsell from my laptop rather than my computer. It's being used for a project to help my neighbor. My neighbor has a physical disability, and so it's easier for him to have digitized versions of things rather than DVDs due to his physical disability. He's also a devout, faithful Mormon, and in essence brainwashed. But it's not something that I can just shatter his belief system and expect to have him remain friendly with me. When your belief system gets shattered, you blame the wrong people. But for those of you who, last night I got a whole bunch of ideas on what was intended to be just a video. I can actually turn this into a book, but I was taking notes on how brainwashing works, specifically with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then woke up early in the morning. I'm gonna crash in a few hours. I may not get to my run, but I had all these notes this morning as well when I first woke up, because as the church is crashing, if you've not heard the news, it's necessary for the church to up the ante on their devotion or their brainwashing techniques. As such, they had their youth devotional last night, so that's what I'm digitizing for the neighbor. So to give you an idea of how controlling brainwashing is, there are a few of you who've let yourself be known as anti-Mormon but pro-Trump. And I've been trying to instruct you guys that Mormons are alt-right conservatives. They're not commie Democrats. And people are having a hard time with that because you guys are brainwashed on the political spectrum, not the religious spectrum. And so, for example, all of you who are supporters of Trump, I am going to say one word, and you can't tell me obviously, but what comes to your mind first and foremost when I say this word. I'm going to say this word, Hillary. Lock her up. Lock her up. You have been brainwashed, trained, conditioned to say lock her up in a chant whenever her name comes up. You've been brainwashed. That's how easy it is. That's how simple it is. So, for the church, there are numerous ways to brainwash people. The church uses a whole ton of them. I'm just going to go over the list. I'm not going to go over details. I should do video segments for each little part. There's like tons, and I'm going to go over them here. Visual stimuli, which includes Book of Mormon videos, conferences, devotionals, ad campaigns. If you've ever seen a Mormon ad campaign on TV. Emotional connection, referring to the feelings that we have as the Spirit. Getting a sense of family, not just with the temple, and doing genealogy to save your family, but the family values promotion that they do. Hymns also generates feelings. You get the music we listen to creates an emotional attachment, and in the environment of church, in the environment of conference, the hymns generate a connection, an emotional connection to the talks that are given, and that's the addiction part of it that Karl Marx was referring to, that everybody somewhat misinterprets. Altering definitions, and I've given other examples. Testimony has been altered in its definition. Obedience, that's been a big one that I've done videos on a few days ago, because it's about agency Mormons. It's not about obedience. The definition of obedience has been altered to be taking away agency. Trigger words, I've already gone over a few of them so far, but the use of Jesus, again, for those who have an emotional connection, they like to hear the words Jesus. If you've ever, there was a phase where our culture was mocking or trying to enforce the husbands saying the words "I love you" to their wives, because for some reason women need to hear that trigger word in order to feel that they are loved. And sorry, women, you're allowing yourselves to be brainwashed. Name calling is also part of trigger words, not just comfort trigger words, but also name calling trigger words. These can be both pro and anti. Bullying, anti, where you call somebody an apostate, an antichrist, but also a rock, hardliner. Those name calling trigger words are part of that as well. And emotional adjectives, choice, precious, adjectives that are based on feelings, opinions, that are not based on standard measurements of fact. It's weird. I'm looking at the camera, and it looks like I'm looking at the camera, but I look up here at the camera. It's freaking me out. All right. Claims to authority. The leaders claim to speak for Jesus as God's prophet. Those are even involving trigger words as well, but that claim to authority trigger words. Oops, there's some stuff on the back of that one. Like I said, this is long. I can't go into all of these in too much detail. Getting Mormons to enforce the prophet's will. Peer pressure, where those who are easily brainwashed are then used by the church as those brainwashed Mormons go and enforce and call others to repentance, to action, anything that'll keep Mormons in line. Uh, Dichotomous categorization. This is my way or the highway. This is true or false, good or bad, those black and white decisions. And people try to claim that there's gray areas. There are no gray areas, and there are no this way or that way. There are multiple options. It's just there are certain questions that are either yes or no. But in regards to, like, did you commit a crime? It's either yes or no. There is no gray area in that. But the dichotomous categorization that I'm talking about is the church is either true or it's false. And it is. It's either true or it's false. However, it is altered in definition that Mormons refuse to do the research necessary to identify it as what they would find out is false. And so they categorize it rather than doing the research necessary. Faithful or apostate is a dichotomous categorization, and that goes back to the other thing I was talking about, name calling, loyal or antichrist. Those name calling turn into the categorizations, the tribal groups that war against each other. And that's what you see on social media, is you see the pro-Mormon sites or channels talking about the church is true and they lie for the church, giving fallacious arguments as apologists. And then you have the anti-Mormon, which are going with the trigger words rather than the research. There are a few that do research, myself and It's Me Jesse has never been Mormon like I have. I was born and raised going on 50 years, so I know everything about Mormonism. It's Me Jesse doesn't know anything about Mormonism. She was approached by missionaries a year ago December, and she wanted to understand and know about Mormonism, and so she did her research and posted videos based upon her research. And of course, because she was finding out there's so many bad things about the church, Mormon pro groups were attacking her in that tribal warfare with that dichotomous categorization. Again, I shouldn't be getting into explaining this because this is going to take forever. We're already at 15 minutes. Distract and deter from the truth. This is where Mormons use trigger words such as deep doctrine, church approved, follow only the living prophet. Those types of things detract us from what the actual truth is. They completely sidestep the pursuit of truth with a distraction or a detour. Outright lying. The church is getting bolder now, and outright lying, and still, they lost 10 million instantly when they came out with their gospel topic essays confessing that they've been lying to people. And the news now is that exodus of active membership, and that's what it was. It wasn't an exodus of people saying, I wish to resign my membership. No, it was just people like me who aren't going to church, who aren't going to the temple, who aren't giving money, who aren't doing anything. And so now after 2012, when it was reported in the news that there was an exodus of around 10 million of active membership, we're now seeing the physical results of that. The church had been hollowed out, and now the shaky foundations, because of it being hollowed out, are collapsing. They're crumbling now. And so now the news reports are showing that the membership numbers are at their lowest for the first time in decades. And so, yeah, the church is collapsing. And it doesn't help when you have Gaddy v. COP, if you know that lawsuit, and the 100 billion scandal, and then mine. Remember, let people know about it. Get this made public. Let everybody know I beat the church. I won the lawsuit. And we need to make it public in order to ensure that the church goes down in flames. Because they lost. They got caught trying to cover up their connection in the case against me, as they tried to cover up the payments that they had been making to a person crucial in the 2008 case against me, which I'm using in the lawsuit. And then the judges in the federal court that I submitted my complaint to, they're covering for the church, purposely delaying, enabling the church to attempt the cover-up of that connection, that financial connection to that 2008 person. I caught them, busted them, sent the motion on Friday exposing them for that. And so, please, guys, if you want the church gone forever, you need to make this public. You need to let people know. The church lost a lawsuit, a huge lawsuit. I was forced by the judge to put a dollar amount on the lawsuit. I won the lawsuit. It didn't even get started, and I already won. But the judges are going to cheat to protect the church. You need to make it public to prevent the judges from doing this. But yeah, so I put in a dollar figure, and I said, I need everything from the church. If I'm being forced to give a dollar amount, I need everything, because it's the church that needs to stop. Thus, the dollar amount for damages is either in the tens of billions or the hundreds of billions. And then the 100 billion scandal came out, and I said in another motion, news has broken. The request for relief is now in the hundreds of billions. But again, we're going to need to subpoena the financial records for an actual thing. All right, see, we're only getting up to 20 minutes now. After outright lies, I have extortion threats. This is where the church threatens Mormons' afterlife. And obedience that I talked about earlier ties into that, where they take away your agency. They threaten your afterlife with dichotomous categorizations, and your family's afterlife, where you become the one to enforce for the church through peer pressure upon your family to get them actively involved and obedient. And then you have the action part that Mormons take, where Mormons are praying to cover up the church's crimes. They don't see it that way when they're praying. We pray that the enemies of the church may be thwarted, or, whatever code word or trigger word that Mormons will use. In prayer, there are cultural trigger words. For a blessing on the food, for example, it's been a long-standing trigger word, phraseology, a rote prayer almost, where people will say, we're thankful for this food, we ask thee to bless it, that it may nourish and strengthen our bodies, that it may do us the good we need. Common throughout the church as I travel around saying prayer with the same words. Very frustrating. Especially when they're talking about sugar snacks. Alright, contradicting information. This is the video that I talked about regarding multiple prophets being multiple masters over the Mormons. It causes confusion, and that confusion is specifically tailored to cause confusion so that Mormons are in fear. This causes fear and trauma. So multiple leaders giving commands, Mormons then are afraid. Who do I follow? Which do I follow? What do I do? I don't understand. And that trauma causes breakdowns, and the breakdowns make a person more gullible and susceptible to brainwashing, influencing. And re-education is the next one here, where they call you to repentance, put fear and trauma in your lives so that you will be re-educated. They make you think you've committed a sin when you haven't, and then you then think that, oh, I hadn't been studying my scriptures hard enough. Well, you haven't, because they haven't taught you how to do that. And so you think you just need to read, that redefinition of reading into studying. It's not studying just to read. Studying involves a whole lot more. And that altering of definitions is part of the re-education program, where you get re-educated in the incorrect information. Idolatry is a part of this re-education. Idolatry is where things are good or bad. And people think, oh, I need to have a list of what I need to do. Obedience. And that's not what it's all about. That's not what agency is about. Idols, objects, have no power or influence to influence you or anyone else. And yet the church is doing that. They're using objects as a re-education tool to get Mormons to comply. And when they've brainwashed you, you are their hostage. You're being held hostage, and you need to be rescued in that case. That's why I'm doing all these videos. And Stockholm Syndrome takes in, because you're being held hostage by your religion. You then develop a love for your hostage takers, who are your church leaders. That's Stockholm Syndrome. And you end up protecting and defending them at all costs because of that bond, that emotional connection that you've attached yourself to the church leaders for. Then enacting the brainwashing. This is the dangerous part. This is where, when the church has you in their grasp, they control you. They are your puppet master. They then can do status checks to see how brainwashed you are and where you are in standing. This is where the church is weak, because in 2011, when they came out with their gospel topic essays, thinking that they're going to get ahead of the anti-Mormon critical literature, they goofed. They confessed to lying, and a mass exodus of 10 million just lost activity. Said, all right, enough. We're not going to church no more. This ain't right. And there are several reasons to choose from for Mormons. And it's all different for each of those. But the church then did a campaign that got down to the membership level where pro-Mormons were saying, oh, these guys aren't studying their scriptures, that's why they're falling away. These guys are sinners, that's why they fell away. See, they're attacking. And what the church does when they enact on the brainwashing, they do a call to action. This is what the youth fireside was yesterday. They're doing a whole bunch of pushing with the youth. This is what Hitler did. He focused on the youth. When your membership numbers need to be boosted, you go to the youth and you brainwash the youth. The youth are more vulnerable to brainwashing, and that's why the church is doing that. And we as parents should be paying close attention to what our kids are being taught by these church leaders, because Nelson has enacted the youth battalion. That should scare all of you, because the Hitler Youth was his youth battalion. And so, yes, Mormons get taken advantage of in this position. Scammers who do brainwashing techniques will scam people out of money. This is their enacting of brainwashing, is they scam the people out of money. And Mormons are the most susceptible to this because of the church suscepting them to financial payments. The extortion with tithing, which is protection money, which I put in the lawsuit, which all Mormons are compromised to the church for. That's why I got the judges. I got them busted, because it's not, they can't claim that it's just judicial protocol when they are beholden to the church. The Mormons in the federal government pay the protection money to the church in order to have participation in the rituals. Other religions don't do that because that's not a crime. When you ask and demand for money in order to participate in the rituals, oops, they've crossed the line into criminal territory. And then there's the pyramid scheme, but then there's the oaths in the temple of loyalty to the church over government. And as a judge, you can't give a loyalty oath to the church over the government. Judges did that in my case. That's why I won. That's why you need to get the word out. All right, and so that's the enacting part, is a call to arms even, that ends up getting Mormons involved in a war of sorts, even though it may not be an actual war, but a type of war where Mormons get victimized with war casualties. Call to arms. It's a calling in of the chips, for example, where the church has finished gambling and are now turning in their gambling chips for actual cash from those who have been brainwashed, to use a gambling terminology, which the church vocally opposes gambling, but then embrace having all Utah citizens have insurance and get representation to pay for, such as in my case. They force people to have their own lawyer to sue, and if they can't afford their own lawyer, they have to do it themselves. That's the punishment, as lawyers and prosecution and police are all on the take for the church to protect and defend them. And so that's the dangerous part. What is interesting is that with that 10 million that had left in 2012, there came a change in the voting dynamic in Utah. As the church had been opposed to certain things, such as medical marijuana, gay rights, protecting LDS children, and the public are rising up, voting against what the church demands. This is unusual in Utah, where Mormons have been loyal and brainwashed and were agreeing with the legislature, who were ordered by the church to do a law, or to make a law, or to not make a law. And so the equal rights also is now coming up again, as people are saying, hey, we've done a poll, almost 70% of Utahns want the Equal Rights Amendment. And we just need one state to get it going, to approve it. And the church came out and said, no, we don't want equal rights for women. So again, Mormons, they hate blacks, they hate the poor, they hate women, just like alt-right conservatives. They're Nazis, as they've supported Nazism. Mormonism and the swastika. Get the book, on sale now at fine bookstores, Amazon. So, see, 30 minutes, and I was just stating all the list of the tactics used by brainwashers to brainwash people. This is how serious it is, how devastating it is. And like I said, I can go over each one of these into more further detail. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it for video segment. I don't know if I should make a separate category for this or not, but I needed to warn you because of what's going on. The church is under attack, as they call it, because of all the lawsuits that are coming up against them. The woman who sued them for being raped by her mission president. People are thinking that it was in the Salt Lake Temple basement. No, it was not in the Salt Lake Temple basement. Don't fall for those rumors. It was the MTC where she was sexually assaulted. Still bad, but I think her case has been settled, because I'm not hearing from her anymore. And that means that she was forced into silence about how much money she got. But the Protect LDS Children effectively shut down the church, forcing them to change the rules on how bishops interview children, and allowing for witnesses now, except for men. Men are the discriminated group now. And the lawsuits by Gaddy, myself, again, let people know, guys. And then the 100 billion scandal with tithing, and then the loss of membership that's now physically manifesting itself. Because when you have Mormons that aren't going to church, they're not getting their children baptized either. And thus, it's just a matter of time before the physical results manifest themselves. So, 35 minutes still. Can you believe this? Trying to sum things up, and it still takes a long time. So, yeah, guys, this is an emergency. A real emergency, where people's lives are in danger. This isn't a brainwashing technique. Mormons will try to say, oh, you're trying to brainwash the anti-Mormons against us. No, guys, you're the ones brainwashed This is a intervention. Although interventions are lame. We think it is in your best interest, my best interest. All I wanted was a Pepsi. Suicidal tendencies. Awesome. I'm shaking the table here. That's shaking the video. All right, I'm done.